What is going on, my good people? Welcome back to the channel. This is Unnecessary Rambling. I am Brandon Sylvia. Thank you all for tuning in to talk about my latest PlayStation 5 pickups. You seem to enjoy the last video where I was discussing like the 13 or so games that I recently added to the collection, and today I have about 10 games that I've recently added to the physical PS5 library. And I feel like as long as you guys, enjoy these and want to see more of these, I'll just keep on doing these. Every time I have around 10 or so games that I've recently added to the collection, I'll just come on here, talk about them real quick, and give you guys a quick update on all of them. So if you enjoy the content, consider subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, all that good shit for the old algorithm. And let's go ahead and dive into the first title. Also, a lot of these games, I plan on doing a video going a little bit more in depth with some of these games and some of the other games that are not in this list that I've finished recently, like Separate Ways and Phantom Liberty, which obviously don't have physical copies, and like El Paso Elsewhere that's exclusive to Xbox right now. So some stuff that I have been playing and finished recently, I want to dive a little bit more in depth on that stuff in a later video. But tying right on into that, a game that I have finished in this lot here, Fort Solis. So, if you've been around the channel for a while, you know that this was one of the games I was really worried about that was releasing this year. I was just like really skeptical. We saw some trailers that didn't really seem to show us much of anything other than the game looked excellent, and I was just really skeptical of it. I figured that it was going to be one of those titles that spent, the entirety of their budget on getting these excellent actors and actresses to, voice these characters. Troy Baker, Roger Clark, and then the unsung hero of this game is Julia Brown. Her character is tremendous in Fort Solis. She does a tremendous job voicing, what is the name? Jessica Appleton is the character that she plays in Fort Solis. She does such a great job in that role. And Troy Baker, I know it's kind of like a meme at this point how Troy Baker is in pretty much everything, but the dude crushes his role in Fort Solis. And I gotta say, it's a simple game, no doubt about it. It's not a mechanically complicated game whatsoever, but it is a game that's kind of like a somewhat Until Dawn meets walking simulators, set on Mars. It's this sci-fi horror title, and I'm not saying it's like a 10 out of 10 experience, but if you're into the kind of slower walking sims that are the thing about this game that I really appreciate is it does almost nothing annoying. Like, it just gives you a really damn good story from front to back. It plays like a Resident Evil game without the combat. You're going around and finding keys to access previously locked off parts of these different ships or different locations that you're exploring. And it's pretty QTE heavy. There's quite a few quick time events, some of which are a little bit on the annoying side, but you end up getting used to it pretty quickly. And it's graphically just absolutely beautiful for a much smaller budget game. This is definitely not your AAA game, and it is, like I said, it is a walking sense in every sense of that word, or every sense of those two words, I guess. But it is a true blue walking simulator. Like, your character literally cannot run. You cannot sprint. You cannot walk fast. You're just slowly walking your way through these different locations and just kind of marveling at the visuals around you. And then just, kind of taking in how well written and how well performed the entirety of this story is. It is a really, really good story. It gets a little bit tropey, a little bit cliche towards the end of the game. You kind of see where it's going, and when it gets there, you're like, oh wow, okay, I not necessarily stunned by where we ended up, but through, it's a 3-hour game, 3.5, 4 hours, something like that. 4 hours at the max if you just really want to explore. But yeah, I gotta admit, Fort Solis, and the thing about it is like, I understand why they couldn't show much of this off, with trailers and shit, because all the big moments, all the moments that like are hard hitting that get you invested, like, you can't really show that in a trailer. So I feel bad for judging this prematurely. And yeah, this is a really, really solid game. I think it's only like $30 for the physical copy. If you're cool with, playing through a 3-hour solid horror walking simulator, 3-hour walking simulator, you're cool with paying $30 for that, I would highly recommend Fort Solace. And next up here, we have the best football game of 2023, Wild Card Football. Really shocked by this one as well. This isn't one that I was as skeptical of, but I was like, I just figured it would be like some kind of NBA Playgrounds style game that was, more geared towards a kid-friendly audience. And this is actually a lot more interesting than I would have ever expected. It plays out a lot more like a card game than I ever anticipated. You pretty much get like these power-up cards, these different abilities that you can use throughout the gameplay. And it that kind of leans into the zany, over-the-top elements that make it more along the lines of like a Mario sports game. Like you'll get, the ability to turn your player into a tornado or into a rocket, and you press R1 at the right time, you take your defensive end, he'll turn into a tornado, throwing all the offensive linemen out of the way, and you'll sack the quarterback immediately. Or like you can pull up rocks from the ground and shoot them in a straight line, and that'll hit the running back. Like, the quarterback pitches the ball, you press R1 right at the right time as you're lined up with the running back. You have these rocks that come out of the ground and just smash into the running back. But there's even like more strategic elements that you can utilize, where you'll get the ability to prevent the player from kicking. So you'll be able to prevent the opposing team from kicking on the next play if you use that card. So say you're like, you got the offense, or you're controlling the defense. The opposing team is on like 3rd and 14. And you click, but they're in, field goal range, and you have the prevent from kicking on the next down card, and you play that card, and say you stop them and it's like, 4th and 7, but they're in field goal range, and they would obviously go to kick the field goal at that point. Well, if you use the prevention, the kick prevention card in that moment, they can't kick the field goal, so they have to go for it on 4th and 7, which obviously can drastically sway the momentum of a game, where like if you're tied up and they miss it, tied up in the 4th quarter, and they don't convert on 4th and 7 and you get the ball back, like that changes the entire tide of the game. So they do a cool job of blending the silly, zany, over-the-top elements and also the strategic elements. And, it's fun, man. It's a fun video game. It's fun to turn your quarterback into a damn giant. You press R1 at the right time, your quarterback just morphs into this damn giant, and he's stomping on all the defenders as he's running towards the end zone. Or like you get a shield, say, once again, you can kind of blend some of the silly shit into the strategic elements of the game, where say you get, the shield ability, and you'll drop back to pass, you press R1, or I think that ability is automatic. So as soon as you drop back to pass, your quarterback will have the shield around him. And say you're trying to convert a 2-point conversion, and you only have that little 3 yards, 5 yards to get to the end zone. So you just quarterback sneak with the shield around you, and you charge straight into the end zone. So it's like it's all about strategizing and using these cards at the most opportune times. The actual like moment-to-moment football mechanics aren't really the strongest. You can get locked into animations, and the ability to like throw the ball on the run with the quarterback doesn't feel as satisfying as something like Madden. Some of the control mechanics are a little bit weird, like stiff arm is triangle and dive is L1, and there's no like hurdle button. The juking feels so arcadey to the point where it doesn't really feel that effective. But with all that said, I would still recommend this over, something like Madden right now. Obviously, it would depend on if you're looking for something more arcadey or more simulation based, but I just think the amount of fun that you can have in wildcard football with the weird card elements and that zany Mario sports style feel that is on offer, I really appreciate it. I do think it's a bummer that there's no co-op mode for the season. That feels like a huge misstep, but yeah, it's a game that I definitely have some critiques for, but still damn good time, and I really enjoyed my 10 or so hours with it. And next up, we have one that is another short but sweet title, and that is Trepang 2. I believe I'm saying that right. You could also call it Fear 4 if you would like to. This is straight up a Fear spiritual successor through and through. It only took me about 4 or so hours to finish this. Really, short, sweet, but damn good, damn fun. Just a nice, creepy first-person shooter that is gory as all hell, dismembering enemies all over the place. You got your damn slowdown feature that you had in Fear. The first-person shooting I don't think is top tier by any means, especially with like how they design the mechanics where L2 throws the grenade and there's not like a zoom in aim feature. And that just kind of broke my brain for a second. I constantly was throwing grenades with L2 when my brain was trying to autocorrect to remember that, oh, I can't zoom in and aim with L2. I'm just constantly lobbing out grenades and like inflicting damage upon myself. So that shit was a little bit annoying. But along with the slowdown feature that is obviously fun as shit, was fun as shit in Fear, it's fun as shit in Trepang 2, you have a cloaking ability in here, and that lines up nicely with some stealth takedowns that you can perform. So if you want to go in a more stealthy manner, at times you are allowed to do that and take out the enemies one by one. And don't get me wrong, this is a game that very much leans into the brutality, to the gore, dismembering enemies. You got your shotgun, you're going up close, close range, shooting a dude, blowing his head off, turning around, spinning, shooting another dude in his legs, blowing his legs off, shooting the next dude in the gut, separating him at the waist. It is very visceral, very gory, but those of you who have followed the channel for a while, you know I'm a fucking weirdo and I love that shit. The one thing that is very, very different from Fear with Trepang 2 is the difficulty. This game is very, very challenging. And like I said, it took me quite a while to get adjusted to the control schematics with Trepang 2. But man, I struggled on quite a few different occasions with this game, especially the final 2 boss fights. That was rough. I had a real hard time getting through that on the normal difficulty. And obviously, I'm not your, Call of Duty, Destiny style guy. Like, I'm not constantly playing first-person shooters, so maybe it was just a skill issue on my end, but I had a hard time getting through old Trepang 2, but still fun game. Story solid enough, cool twist, and yeah, I'd recommend it. All right, and next up we have Assassin's Creed Mirage, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I got about 4 hours into Mirage, and I was just like, okay, do I want to do this exact formula for another 10 hours, or do I want to dive into something else, check out something else? And I was like, I think I'm going to put it down for the time being. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to it. I was just like, man, this is very, very repetitive, very boring to me. And maybe it was just a mood thing. I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't feeling the stealth at the time. So I might go back to it before the end of the year. I would like to finish it before the end of the year. That way, when I do my 2023 Game of the Year rankings, I can speak a little bit more in depth on it, or at least have a more in-depth understanding of the game. But from the time I spent with it, I was just like having a real tough time getting connected with the story. I just felt the story was subpar at best in that opening 4 hours, and it was making it pretty difficult for me to like want to continue on with the game. And for a game that's so limited, and for a game that is a much smaller scale and scope, it's just kind of surprising to me how Ubisoft can't seem to create like intriguing storylines. It's really bizarre. I would think the smaller scale and the more focused scope of Mirage could easily lend it to being like a really unique and engaging storyline, and like really putting some effort in that area. And instead it's like, okay, yeah, this is this is an Assassin's Creed, a stealth Assassin's Creed game where if you want to do that loop over and over again, and you're fine with just that moment-to-moment gameplay, but not being carried by like a strong narrative, then cool. And like I said, maybe it's just a mood thing. Maybe I will go back to it before the end of the year and just have that itch scratched from the stealth mechanics in that game. But yeah, it wasn't really hooking me in any meaningful way. I do think the movement and then the platforming are pretty damn solid. It's always fun just running around and jumping from rooftop to rooftop, platforming and going and finding the hidden chests, and like that shit is fun. But I just figured my time would probably be better spent elsewhere, checking something else out that I might enjoy more. All right, and next up we have Lake, and this is a game that I played, I think it was exclusive to Xbox in 2020 or 2021, and I played through it and finished it there. You're playing as a mail carrier, going around delivering mail and building up relationships, meeting the different townspeople, doing like little errands and quests for them. It's fun, very lighthearted. It was very, 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 I can't emphasize enough, very buggy when I played it at launch. But hopefully this physical copy is, I know that I think this just came out this year or maybe the end of last year. So hopefully it's all patched up. All the content is on the disc. But yeah, it's just a really serene game with a pretty solid story, and it's just chill. It's nice getting to drive around in the mail truck and meet the different people. It's really relaxing. I'm not saying it's the world's greatest narrative. It's not The Last of Us. It's not leaning into the decision making like a Until Dawn or a Detroit Become Human or your Telltale Games or Baldur's Gate or whatever, but it's a nice, chill, relaxing experience, and I wanted to have it in the collection because I did appreciate the game, and I'd like to throw the developers some cash. All right, next up is another one that I played through and finished on Xbox, and that is Cult of the Lamb. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I played through this on Game Pass, if I'm not mistaken. This is a really unique game, really cool game where you're essentially building up this cult of lambs, and you have to like indoctrinate them into your cult, and you have to keep their morale high, and you have to kind of manage this farm at the same time, and you got to like give them places to sleep and shelter and food and all this shit, or they'll start going crazy and rebelling against you and the cult. And when they do begin to rebel against you, you can then sacrifice those characters, and it is a batshit crazy game, and that's all combined with like some minor rogue-like structure, if I'm not mistaken, where it's a very simple, the combat loop is pretty damn simple. Some inspiration there from Hades maybe, but really where all the interesting shit is taking place is with the cult management system that you have going on here. And yeah, it's visually stunning. I don't know if you can see, I'll obviously roll some gameplay, but you can see some of the locations there on the back. You can't really see it too well, but definitely has a strong visual style to it. And yeah, I had to get even just the cover, that cover stands out so well. It's just it has an awesome art style across the board. And I guess we're going back to back here. We have Proteus. This is one that I know for sure I played and finished on Game Pass. Just a good old classic boomer shooter. It's you're painting the damn environments in blood. That's the one thing I remember the most about this game. Just slaughtering these big ass monsters with your dope ass weapons, and you will literally just turn an entire environment into the blood from the monsters that you've been slaughtering. It is just that old school, first person shooter energy with some modernization to it, to where it doesn't feel too outdated. Really fun game. I had a good time with that. Once again, crazy difficulty spike towards the end of that game, but outside of that, I had a great time with Proteus. And next up, one I played on Game Pass but did not finish, that is Trek to Yomi. This is like a 2D side-scrolling action game set in feudal Japan, and once again, art style is absolutely fucking exceptional. It is beautiful. It's so cinematic while also being very simple, and how they blend like such a simplistic design into such a cinematic experience it's really impressive. But some of that simplicity with just the 2D side scrolling action, I just kind of got bored with it after a bit. I once again was impressed the entire time with the art style, but outside of that, I just didn't think the gameplay was sticky enough to keep me around. Alright, and staying right on theme here, we have A Plague Tale Requiem, another one that I played through and finished on Game Pass, and this is one of my favorite games of the generation, so I had to add it to the collection. Unfortunately, it's got that little ugly ass sticker residue right there on it, but I fucking adored this game, and it's just one of the most beautiful games of the generation. Probably my favorite story of the generation so far. Like, this is a absolute must play, top 5 hidden gems of the generation, bar none. It is so damn good, so hard hitting, so emotional. If you're a fan, anybody that's watching this that is a fan of The Last of Us, play A Plague Tale Requiem. It's the only game comparable to The Last of Us in the storytelling department. Obviously, play A Plague Tale Innocence first. This is a direct sequel from A Plague Tale Innocence, but A Plague Tale Innocence probably only 7-8 hours max to get through. Requiem's a little bit longer. I think it took me about 25 hours or so to finish it, but it's more expansive and more involved mechanically, so there is a little bit more action, a little bit more combat in Requiem than there was in Innocence, but it is a showpiece. It is stunning on a visual level, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they just added a 60 frames per second mode to the game. When I played it at launch, it was 30 frames per second, which I don't mind for heavy, just narrative-driven experiences. And but yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's now 60 frames per second. So no better time than the present to jump into A Plague Tale Requiem. And last but certainly not least, we got old Stray. I played through this on PlayStation Plus, I believe it was on, and I thought it was okay. The kind of magnetic platforming where you really couldn't control the cat in the environments to like get jump up to the next ledge and shit, that kind of bummed me out, where it was just more of like a point and click experience. But it's a beautiful game. The story is actually a lot better than I would ever expect it to be, but it's whenever I saw it nominated for Game of the Year in 2022, as much as I can appreciate aspects of the game, the standout kind of neon aesthetic to the city, for sure, that is immaculate. But Game of the Year or top 6 games of 2022, I don't think I would put it there, but hey, I didn't hate it by any stretch of the imagination. There's kind of some cool like Metal Gear Solid inspiration in some of the levels. Like it's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It just, it's like a solid 7 out of 10 to me. But this cover alone, I mean, come on, that is absolutely a fantastic fucking cover. I had to add it to the collection. But yeah, man, here are the 10 games that I have recently added to the collection. I appreciate y'all for stopping by and tuning in, and hopefully I could shine a light on some games that might not have been on your radar previously. And do the same for me. Anything that you have played that has a physical PS5 copy that you're like, damn, I wish more people were talking about this. Because I know there's a lot of these damn, Fort Solaces and Trey Pang 2s and a lot of these games that go a little bit under the radar. And then if there's anything that you have picked up and was like, damn, that's solid, why is nobody talking about that? Let me know down in the comments below. Get some more eyeballs on it. And yeah, I'll happily buy a damn copy and check it out if it's something that looks interesting to me. But that's going to be it for me, man. I appreciate y'all for stopping by, for tuning in. Like I said, hit the like button, subscribe, the bell notifications, all that shit if you would like to. And until next time, guys, take it easy. Goodbye.